All right, we're here with Drew Wilson of Plasso. And Drew, I'm going to let you go ahead and give the spiel about kind of your background, your history, how you got to where you are right now, and a brief bit about Plasso.
Yeah, for sure. So I started off as a child, as most people, and when I was a kid, I started doing art and crafts and stuff like that, paintings. I was into that, and then that kind of evolved into using Photoshop because my dad had to use it for work. Um, and so I was kind of exposed to that super early on, version 2 of Photoshop. And over the years just kind of grew to love like coming up with concepts like design concepts in Photoshop. Made my first website in 1996, 20 years ago. Um, and yeah, been building things on the web since then. I taught myself how to code, like back end code in 2002, just out of necessity. I didn't know anybody else who did, and I wanted to see like the stuff I was making, in HTML, CSS. I wanted to see that stuff like be real with the database and all that jazz, even though I didn't know what a database was at the time. So taught myself that, uh, and then from there moved into like a bunch of other development stuff. I never wanted to be a developer. I always thought it'd be like super nerdy and boring, but ended up that I really like doing it. So it was great being forced to do that, kind of forcing myself to do that because then I could design and code my own stuff
Yep.
and make my own products. Because from a young age, I've always wanted to have my own business or do my own thing, that kind of thing. So worked out good in that sense, learning how to code, learning how to design, and then spent, I guess, my entire career building different little apps, products, services, that kind of thing. And then most recently, Plasso, uh, bada boom, uh, and have recently in the last year gone full time on Plasso in the sense of not working on anything else and raised money and built a team around it. And so taking it to the next level.
Right on. Okay, so that is to me one of the most interesting things with you is you've done so many different products and projects, and not just apps or just I mean, some of it's installed apps for the Mac, some of it, just a little bit of everything. Um, how did you juggle all of that? And then how did you decide? And at what point did you know, okay, I'm going to just completely focus on Plasso. I'm going to raise money. I'm going to settle into this and really swing for the fences.
Yeah. So uh, it's, I kind of had a threshold in my mind, not like any specific number or anything like that, but rewinding the clock back a bit, in 2010, I released a set of icons called Pictos, and by doing that, it I had no idea it would, but it made me a lot of money. And it gave me enough money to work on whatever I wanted to work on without having to do client work, which is what I had always done before that. And I knew that the money that Pictos was making wouldn't last because there's only so many designers buying icons, that kind of thing. And so I wanted to find something that had its own legs and like would work on its own without me trying to force it. Like I come up with an idea that's cool, and if I wasn't getting much traction, I could spend all my time and try to force it and try to like get a bunch of traction, or I could just move on to something else and wait till I get something that's like got its own momentum. And so that's what I was trying to do. There are definitely other ways about going about building a business, but that's just the way what I wanted to do. And so I ended up finding that with Plasso. It had its own legs, and it was doing well on its own, and it was making enough money for myself and then some. So I was like, okay, this is working out better than all the bajillion of other things I've tried. So this thing is doing something different, and I want to take it to the next level because of the fact that it was doing well on its own.
So, looking back, do you think you would have come around to creating Plasso had you not gone through everything else you created? And because in a way, you were building things, a lot of your products served your own needs to sell your own stuff. Um, and it seems from the outside, at least, like Plasso was more of a product of your diversity of projects rather than like its own little thing that just sprung up out of nowhere.
Yeah, so Plasso kind of has a longer history than just the brand Plasso. It started off as Quixley. Uh, well, my venture in e-commerce started off as a product called Quixley, which was you could sell your digital goods super easily using PayPal or Google Wallet, and that was launched in 2009. And that was before Stripe was around. And I built that to sell my icons and also to try to make money off the platform. But the business model wasn't good there. It was old school days. I was charging based on like how much storage you use and all that kind of jazz, which is like so far and away now. Nobody does that. Not even Amazon. But and then when Stripe came out, I wanted to make a human interface for Stripe. Just something so that way anybody could use Stripe because it was a developer tool only. And so I made another app that had a lot of the same functionality as Quixley, but was kind of focused around general payments, and that was called Spacebox. But again, I didn't get the business model right there, so that platform didn't make me money either. And so I came up with a new business model, and then recoded the whole thing, and rebranded it as Plasso. And with that new business model, things started working out, and it started making money. So Plasso itself is kind of a long time coming, I guess. I mean, I haven't been working on Plasso the brand or the specific feature set for all that long, but in the realm of e-commerce and selling things online, I've been working on it for years. And like you said, for me, it works out great because I can sell my own stuff. And so if the platform itself doesn't do well, but yet my other things that I'm selling do well, then I win. So
yeah, absolutely. And so that's one of the things that I think so many people miss out on, right? Like somebody will hear about Plasso and be like, wow, that's so cool. He created Plasso. Like little did they see all of the iteration and other projects you did in the meantime that led you to Plasso, right? It's the whole 10-year overnight success type of thing. So to me, that's just definitely one of the most interesting things because everybody's got all their side projects and then they've got to make that decision like, well, I don't know, what do I focus on? What should I do? But a lot of times it's having multiple side projects that they cross-pollinate and give you those ideas to create something bigger.
totally.
So you've done all that, and now with Plasso, you've raised money. So talk about, I guess, kind of that process and how it's changed things now that you're kind of in a different place with Plasso.
Yeah. So like the major difference after raising money is that there are 8 of us now. Up until this point, every line of code, every pixel, every support email is just me. And now there is a team. So that changes things a lot from a product perspective, from customer perspective, from everything, which is great. So that's like the biggest difference. Another difference is I have what's called a runway where I have money in the bank that's just waiting to be used versus it being when you're like bootstrapping until you get to the point where you got tons of money in the bank. It's always like month to month you're trying to figure out how can I budget on this super slim amount of money I'm making in order to grow it, that kind of thing. Whereas now I have money that I can use for what I'm mostly using for is to hire people, right? And I couldn't do that if I was bootstrapping, which is why I went to raise money because I bootstrapped all my career. And now I wanted to do something differently. I wanted to raise money because in our industry, that's available to us. And if you're doing something cool, you can get super good terms when it comes to raising money. And so for me, it was like a no-brainer. Like I'm going to go raise money. I'm going to build a team around it. I'm going to go way faster than I could ever go by myself. So yeah, it's a super different kind of company than something that's being bootstrapped. Now, I didn't go raise money from any VCs or anything like that. It's all angel money. So it is there is a pretty big difference there from companies that have raised money from VCs where they raise like a huge amount of money versus what I did. So yeah.
So you may not have a frame of reference to kind of compare, but to what degree would you say the fact that you bootstrapped ahead of time gave you some leverage in raising money to where you could get better terms and put yourself in a better position than if you were just coming in with really hardly any traction or anything like that and just a solid idea?
Well, I think if you were to put the if you were to put that on a scale of 0% to 100%, it made 100% difference uh, by having bootstraps for a variety of different reasons. So for on my perspective, on me personally, as the CEO, founder, all that jazz, it makes a world of difference, 1,000% difference, because of the fact that I've bootstrapped for so many years and tried so many different ideas and failed and like lost all my savings many times over, sold all my furniture, my house multiple times. Uh, I know what it's like to lose money and to have money and how to hold on to money, that kind of thing. So it's a more serious endeavor for me, I guess, when I'm taking money. Like I feel like I'm taking someone's money. I don't feel like this is owed to me or I have no
Right.
risk, right? Like I am really big on the entrepreneur taking all the risks themselves first.
Yep.
And then if something's going good, then yeah, see if somebody else wants to, come in and take a risk with you and give you some money. But if you don't have that fire under you, like I feel like you'll probably be irresponsible with your money. So that's on like my side. And then I'm suddenly forgetting what the original question was.
Just
Or the
well, it's just how much easier it was having
Oh
having
yeah,
bootstrapped
so,
already and having some leverage going into raising
yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah. So going into it, having the fact that I was making money made it so that I could raise money because it's a SaaS product. Um, when I started raising money in February, there's like a bunch of articles coming out about how the VC climate's totally changed, and now it's like impossible to get money, raise money now, or forever hold your peace, that kind of crap. And I was like, great, now that I'm going to raise money, this starts happening. But no, for sure, 100%. I don't think I would have been able to raise any money unless I was making money. And there's like kind of two. I, from my perspective, this is how it is. If you're gonna if you're gonna raise money for a company that's like a B2B or SaaS or something like that, you have to be making money if you want someone else to give you money because uh, that's the only time you're going to get data on if this is going to work because you're
Mhm.
working with a smaller customer base than say a Snapchat or some consumer app product. Then you have a huge customer base, a potential customer base, and so in those cases, most people come in and raise money on an idea. Like, hey, I got this idea for
Yeah.
this thing. We have like this little minimum viable product that's got like just our friends on it. We haven't like obviously launched in the app store, nor are we going to until we get your money and then build the thing for
Right.
reals. Like that's how most of those deals go. So in those cases, you don't necessarily need to be making money. But if you're going to be doing like a SaaS or like a B2B or something like that, you definitely
You need
gotta
some traction.
yeah, you have to have some traction. And in
Yeah.
the case of SaaS, traction means sales and revenue.
Yeah. So looking back, do you feel like you raised money about the right time, a little late, a little early?
Uh, I mean, I guess I think looking at like the charts and stuff, had I raised like the year prior, it would have been better. But
Yeah.
honestly, like just the way that stuff was for me personally, I think I raised at the right time. So,
Yeah. Right on. So without getting too on a off on a tangent too much, there's always interesting stories once people get the .com for their domain.
mm.
And I have a feeling there probably is. Is that true? Is that can you kind of give that a quick overview of how that went down and share any interesting details behind that for anybody else who's kind of getting started and feel like maybe they need the .com? And I think a lot of people, it's more common now to see companies launch without the .com and then get it once they've got a little bit of money going.
It's because they're
So
all gone.
yeah, yeah. Well, but I think a lot of people, a lot of teams too, they don't even worry about it at that point. They think they need
Yeah.
a .com, and then you get going, and you're like, whatever, we don't need it, and just keep
Yep.
shipping and keep doing good work. It doesn't matter. But it's always interesting to hear the stories about how to get it, and I think a lot of people are also intimidated sometimes, like, oh, I'm afraid to even ask because it's probably going to be, they're going to ask for $200,000 or something absurd.
Yep.
So how did that go down for you?
In my case, it was more than just the .com; it was actual whole brand. But like when I launched Quixley, I got the .com because it was long ago enough that you
Yeah.
could find .coms. But these days you can't. So I had Spacebox and it was spacebox.io. And then I ended up getting spacebox.co from the guy who owned it by trading a domain to him. He was another developer. So we traded domains because he wasn't using it. Um, and then I was spacebox.co. and I couldn't get .com, and I was like, I'm not going to have enough money for .coms. It's super expensive. And so when I wanted to rebrand, with a dictionary name, right? And so I came up with the idea of calling it Plastic. And I was like, sweet, I'm going to have a company called Plastic. And it looked just like that, except it ended in IC. Uh, and and all I did is I tweet about like, hey, I'm super stoked. I just got the domain plastic.io or whatever I ended up getting. Yes, .io. Coming soon or something like that. And from that tweet, like a week later, I got a little envelope in the mail, open it up, and it's some other company saying like, hey, cease and desist, give us all your property, all this other crap. I'm like, wait, what? From one tweet? How is this happening? And then uh, and I had done like trademark searches on plastic, and there was nobody in the tech space using plastic ending in a C or ending in a K. I checked a couple other variations, but you can't really do like searches with the patent search site. But this company, they ended in a Q. And I never thought to end plastic in a Q. So I ended up tweeting the CEO of the company, and he's like, hey, sorry. He's like, my lawyers are crazy. I always tell them not to do stuff, but they do. He's like, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Just don't use the name. I'm like, okay, fine. Frick.
Everything's fine. Just don't use the name.
Yeah, just don't use the name. Well, because they were saying they wanted like the domain for me and all this kind of. So I still have plastic.io, but yeah, I changed the name. But I really liked what I did with the brand, especially the little A thing. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't want to change that. So because I spent a bunch of time on it and already like designed the site and everything. And so I went looking for domains that were similar. And so I was like, what can I end this in that has like everything available? And so Plasso had .com, .org, .net. Nothing was taken. Only the .com was taken, and it was past the expiration. It was past like the renewal time. It was about to hit on the public market again that next month. I was like, whoa, this is like perfect timing. So like, sweet. Bought everything, and I didn't tell anybody that I was going to, what the new name was going to be because I didn't want anything to happen. And then I ordered 3 different back ordering services for Plasso.com. And then on the day that it was supposed to drop, someone else somehow snagged it.
Oh, no.
None of my back ordering stuff worked. I was like, crap. So I didn't get .com, so I launched as .co. And then when I saved up my pennies, I bought .com from the domain shark. It was just some random domain shark that had bought .com.
Wow.
And so I bought it from them. I think it was like $4,600 or something like that.
That's not too bad.
I bought it like just over a year ago, I think. Maybe it was exactly a year ago from this month, or maybe it was last month, a year ago, something like that.
Right on. Well, that's actually probably a pretty good deal, I think, for a nice short.com.
Yeah. And totally. And the reason I wanted to switch, because I'm totally fine with using other domains, it's just because I want to take Plasso like to the next level and have it like the place where you go online to start a business.
Yeah.
Wanted to do a .com just because I feel like the normal people are more normal. I consider them.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. So would you say now that you've raised money, you're kind of taking it to the next level, has it affected how you juggle work and family and all that? Is it pretty much the same? You're still in control? Do you feel more pressure, less pressure, work more or less? How's that changed or evolved?
Yeah, so before I was running multiple projects at the same time, and I would say most all of my career, I've always kind of worked like 2 shifts. So I'll work in the day and then I'll work in the night. And that kind of changed a lot after we had like our second kid. And I stopped working like the night shifts as much. But, I always still, worked as much as I possibly could trying to get something else to stick. And then when I found with Plasso, that happened. And last year was a little different for me because last year we sold everything. We moved up to Washington State for 6 months because our family's from up there. And then we decided we were just going to be there for a year and come back down to Carlsbad. But we decided we didn't want to do that anymore. So after 6 months, we bailed and we got an RV and we RV'd the country for a year. And so it was very different. I was only able to turn on my computer like 15 times the whole trip because traveling I didn't realize I thought I was gonna have all this time like I'm gonna get rid of
Yeah.
all my side projects, could just focus on Plaza, and no man, it's like traveling's like a full-time job in itself. Then traveling
Yeah.
with three little kids, that's super hard. As far as like having time to do any kind of work,
Hmm.
and so anyhow, yeah, last year was pretty different, but it kind of reset me in the sense of like I had to go to bed early, right? So
Hmm.
when we came back to normal life and we actually moved to Sausalito in San Francisco so I could raise money, um, it was like impossible for me to stay up late and work. I was like always just my body was used to not doing that, so it was hard. But then after raising money and moving back down here to Carlsbad, I kind of got back into the swing of things, and so now I'll often stay up and do my second shift just because out of necessity. Like there's so much stuff to do, especially when you bring on a team of people. So now that there's seven other people besides me, it's more than just me managing my own work. I have to always be thinking ahead about what each person can be doing, and then writing off different features and like scoping them out, like what I want people to work on, that kind of stuff. So there's just like a ton more to do. Um, but what's great about it is like you write off these documents about what you want people to do, and then all that stuff happens without you
Yeah.
having to do it. So it's pretty cool.
Was that a really quick change for you, or did you kind of slowly ramp up the hiring? Because being somebody who's on your own and well, not totally on your own, but more or less on your own, working at your own pace on your own things, versus now having to help keep everybody else busy, uh, did that change? Was that kind of overwhelming at first, or was that an easy enough
No, I
transition?
mean, yeah, it wasn't overwhelming at all. Like I had brought on three people before I even raised money. I was like, hey, I'm going to go raise money.
Okay.
Um, I'll give you equity for now, and then once we raise money, you'll start getting paid. And all the people that I've hired, they all kind of knew me, so um, they all believed that I could do it, that kind of thing. So after I raised money, then I brought on a couple more people. But I mean, it all happened in 2016. Like early 2016, I brought on three people. A few months later, brought on a few more, and then a few months later, brought on a few more. So it all happened pretty quickly. I think by like May, everybody who was on the team was already hired. So May or June. So like yeah, June, beginning of June. So within a few months, everyone was hired.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah.
So looking back at the last year, I guess this could be even the last couple of years before raising money. What's kind of been, and it may not even be for Plasso, but I'm guessing it probably would be. What's been the toughest part, the either most stressful or most difficult, or just kind of lowest point through this process of getting to where you are now, and kind of how'd you bounce out of it, pull out of it?
Uh, and did you say not specific to Plasso or specific to
It
Plasso?
doesn't have to be specific to Plasto. Just kind of, with the whole bootstrapping a business, managing it, like we all kind of hit those points. And then when you hit it and you don't realize how normal it is to go through those ruts, it's really, really difficult. But I think once you realize it's normal, you just kind of have to fight through it. That it really helps people kind of see, like, oh, wow, this is totally normal. I just need to, it's going to be a crummy week, but I'll fight through it. Everything will be great on the other side, type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had lots of valleys, and I think every time, if you're progressing and if you're doing better and better over time, I think your valleys get deeper and deeper every time because you have more to lose
Mm-hmm.
every time. So as you build up more, you got more to lose every time you fall. Uh, so I mean, I get used to the fact that yeah, I'm gonna have burnouts. Like I know, like when I'm experiencing burnout, I'm like I know this is a burnout. It's only gonna be temporary. But every time I have one, it's worse than the time before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I mean, I recently went through that. Even after raising money with Plasso, I recently went through that, and it was more like uh, it's every time you put yourself out there, especially publicly, suddenly there's like a whole new weight on your shoulders to like feel like you have to be successful, you know? Like, oh my gosh, like Drew just raised money or something like that. It's like, oh man, he's blown up. Everything's going great for him. So, which I mean, it is, but at the same time, it's like a lot of pressure
Yeah.
because most people who raise money just fall flat on their face. And like, I'm no different. So, um, it's personally a lot of pressure for me because I'm putting myself up. I have a high expectation for myself, probably more than anybody else. And so for me to like be successful and figure out the best use of money and all that kind of stuff, um, it's a lot of pressure, and it can force you down into a valley, that kind of thing. Um, Thankfully, right now I'm not experiencing one, which is good because they always suck. But yeah, I mean, it never stops. I mean, probably the worst I had it was I spent 2 years in a code cave working on my first piece of software that I was going to sell. You can go to firef.com to check it out. It's all the sites still up there and everything. It was a client-side CMS, all in JavaScript. You could even access the database in CSS, yada yada. But it was way too far in the future. No one really got it, what it was, which sucked because I spent a lot of years, all my money. I was literally selling my furniture on Craigslist. I had a side business doing wedding photography, sold off all my camera gear. We were expecting our first kid, and then we were going to have to foreclose on our house. We ended up short selling it. So I was just like the worst. And then as I was going through that, I was like, I launched Fire, and it fell flat on its face. And I was like, this is terrible. I remember I was even expecting to be so successful. Then I went around looking at houses like, yeah, I could probably buy that thing once this thing comes out. It's like I look back and I was like an infant child or something.
Yeah.
But so then it launches, falls flat on its face. All right, I got to launch something quick, something else. And so that's when I came with the idea with Quixly. And I've been working on icons on the side. I was like, I'll use and sell these icons. I have no idea what to sell them for. There was only Glyphish, which was free icons, and there was Helveticons, which was $249 for like 80 icons or something. And so I didn't know what to sell them at. And I was lucky. At that point, I had no idea what I was getting into. But there was literally nobody else selling icons at that time. And nowadays, like, people sell them so much, it was just a race to the bottom, and now you can get like the best icons for free. But when I launched it, it was totally different. There was nobody else selling icons. And so overnight, I'm not even kidding, like fall asleep, wake up to a bajillion tweets that all I did was say, hey, I launched something. And at the time, I didn't have a ton of followers. And it's like everyone, I mean, I still have not experienced that to this day. It's like everyone just like tweeting about it. And I just like overnight, just like my bank account filled up, and then it just kept that way. And so then I went from short selling my house to then a totally different lifestyle, like overnight, just because of that one thing. And so I got, brought out of the valley. You never know when it's going to come or how it's going to come. But I mean, if you keep working hard, and not just working hard, I even tell my son, who's only 6 at the time, it's like, you can't just work hard, because people who work hard, they don't always get what they want. You have to work smart, In that case, I was not working smart. I was just lucky, right? But I feel like with Plasso, I was working smart, because Plasso is not like the result of luck. Plasso is a result of me trying this multiple times over and trying to tweak things slightly. So I feel, in that sense, I feel a little more proud about Plasso than I do about Pictos. But the long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's good. I think in hindsight, I'm guessing, looking back, you would probably say that you spent a little too much time heads down coding versus trying to put it out there and see if anybody wanted it or was ready for it or whatever. Is it really just that simple? You would have said, hey, I'm going to time box myself to 6 months, and whatever I've got at 6 months, I'm going to find a way to launch it.
Yeah, and I mean, that wouldn't have worked for me back then, because what I did back then, I was like, all right, it's got to do everything. Yeah. And then I'd work on little this, little that, little this, little that, until it has everything. But then years later, I came out with this book with my buddy Josh Long called Execute, talking about just getting it out there super quick. And in there, I kind of talk about how you probably should do it, whereas you should give yourself a small goal, not like a big goal, but like figure out what the core difference is, or the core like marketing factor of your idea is, and just like build something small around that, and then expand after you've launched something small around that. Because as long as you launch with their like core idea intact, if people are like, oh, it's this, then you can always expand upon it, and people always remember, oh, it's this, right? Yeah. Even though it's a bunch of other stuff. So more than just like giving yourself a time limit, I think that would just be setting yourself up for feeling like you've failed, because you'll still have all these grand ideas and you wouldn't be able to do them in 6 months. Like, set yourself up with like a super small feature set and launch with that. That's what I would have done. Uh, and
That's
that's
it.
what
Well, that's how Plasso started, right?
most did since then. Oh, sorry, what?
Plasso was a lot more focused when it first launched, right? Or Spacebox, I
Yep.
suppose, really.
Yeah, yeah. Spacebox was super simple. It was just like a one page deal. You sign up
Hmm.
and you connect your Stripe account, and then there's a page for someone to pay you.
Hmm.
Like it's right now in Plasso, it's our pay me product. Like
Yeah,
you just put in plasso.com/ your email address, and someone can just go there and pay you money. So that was what Spacebox was when it first launched years and years ago.
indeed. Trying to decide which of these would be the. So for you, for finding your first customers was a lot more. You've had somewhat of an audience and a following, so for you, a lot of it is finding those first customers, spreading the word is coming from that audience, right?
Yes,
But that
yeah.
was that a conscious effort to kind of develop an audience and reach people and create things that were of interest to a certain audience, or did it just kind of happen and then you said, "Hey, well, all my everything I'm building anyways is kind of helping these people." So, did, was it a plan, or was it, or not necessarily a plan, but was it intentional, or just a happy side effect?
It's a happy side effect. I mean, I just joined Twitter like everybody else and was just
Yeah.
talking with people who are in the same industry as me, that kind of thing. And it turns out I like building things for myself, like things that I like using.
Yep.
So what I would build would be the same kind of things that other people like me would want. So those are who followed me, and so it
Yeah.
just kind of worked out that way.
Right on. So this may be a little too open-ended. If you could go all the way back to when you first started launching businesses, and you could do one thing differently, whether that's skipping a certain, well, no, we're not gonna let you cop out that easy. I would skip this business. What would you do differently? What would you go back and tell yourself 10, 15 years ago to help avoid some pain? What's the one thing?
I mean, I could go back in time and give myself a business idea, but
Well,
no,
just
yeah.
changing kind of how you handled things. I think we all could have gone back and bought the right
Yeah,
domain names.
I think if I could, it would be the same thing we just touched on, like for reals. I think it would just be uh, to focus on a very small aspect and focus on the core of what my idea is and launch that. Because what's great about that, other than you can launch soon, you can also find out if it's going to be successful soon or not without spending a bunch of money on it. And then you can also market it much easier because you're marketing one simple idea and you're not marketing a whole slew of things.
Absolutely.
So it's easier to find that. So it's just all around easier. If not, if you launch with an MVP, a minimum viable product, it's like it's broken in some spots or whatever, or it tries to do everything, but it's like in a really slim way. Not MVP at all. But if you launch with like just a very small feature set built around that core idea, that's what I would go back and tell myself because I literally would have added uh, just from Fire to Dialogues alone, which each were 2 year builds before I launched them. Um, I would have added 4 years of extra stuff I could have made. So
There was, I wish I knew who I heard this from or where I heard it, but somewhere somebody replaced the viable in MVP with useful, right? Like, what's the minimum useful product? What can you create that's going to give somebody value and help them, and start there with that core? And I think the other side effect of what you're talking about is, as developers or product people, we don't necessarily think about the marketing and the messaging and how do we explain this to somebody. But for every feature you add, you're adding support, you're adding marketing effort and overhead, because you have to be able to explain it to people and make them understand what the value is. And a lot of features don't have obvious immediate value. So you're complicating things by adding more burden for marketing as well. So,
yep.
all right. Well, so that's the quick version. I like to keep them pretty dense.
Sweet.
Is there any kind of parting words of advice, sentence of wisdom you want to share?
I guess I would say to everyone who's doing bootstrapping, there's kind of like a purist mentality. where like I bootstrapped and therefore I deserve cake or something. Uh, like a business is a business, and like I've kind of since Fire, I just mentally decided, okay, consciously decided I'm not going to treat my products like my babies, right? Um, because of the fact that like my end goal for myself is not to have X company be the thing that I'm doing forever,
Mm.
right? I have a lot of different things I want to do. And there's one thing missing in order to do all that stuff, and that's money. You need a bunch of money to like do all these different things I want to do, or that you want to do, or whatever, right? Um, and however I get there is however I get there. And so I shouldn't treat my products like my babies, and I should not treat the path to success for this specific moment in time as like this pure, this kind of like my baby kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like raising money is fantastic, but you just have to go about it the right way. You have to make sure that it's going to help you. And if
Hmm.
you're irresponsible with money or you've never taken on risk yourself, it's probably not going to help you.
Yeah.
Uh, but if you've been through the fire yourself, like don't shy away from it. It's like in our industry, it's like the most common thing in the world for someone to raise money. It's so accessible that you should definitely consider doing it if you're in that spot and if you're able to. Um, if for nothing less than just the personal uh, uh, experience and uh, gain and insight and knowledge that you'll get just from going through the process. I learned so much by going through that process that I
Hmm.
never even thought existed before. Um, and yeah, I would just say like, don't treat things like your babies at all. Because, once you've made, say, you've gotten super successful with this company you're working on, what are you going to do next, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not your baby anymore if you move on. So, yeah,
There's
I guess,
a, I haven't written it yet, but there's a new chapter in the book update that I tentatively literally have titled, It's a Business, Not a Baby.
yeah,
And I know from Sifter, like I really just was so emotionally tied to it. And if it wasn't for going through my medical issues, I probably never would have let myself get detached from it because I was so focused on that stuff that enabled me to kind of be like, all right, how does this fit into my life really at this point? And it's hard to do in the moment, right? It's easy to say,
mhm.
but ultimately it's a business, it's an asset. You kind of have to, you don't want to treat it as just a heartless asset, but at the same time, you still kind of have to have a bigger picture view of it because it's not going to be a sustainable business if you treat it like a baby and baby it. So,
Yep. And two, like if you go and raise money, right, you're going to be around people. Hopefully, you raise money from the right people who have been in your shoes multiple times over, and not only that, have actually helped other people in your shoes multiple times over.
yeah.
So you've got people now on your team, your investors that are super smart and that will be able to help you through things that you wouldn't be able to do on your own, like running a big company. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with uh, growing slow, like bootstrapping. That's totally fine. There's also nothing wrong with exploding and growing fast, right?
Yeah.
Um, Either way, you have no idea what the outcome will be. So,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
more often than not, it's not the raising money that was the downfall of a lot of these businesses. It was that the businesses weren't businesses to begin with, and somehow raised money because it was too easy to come by. Um, but that's a whole other story, so we won't go off on
yeah,
that
no,
tangent.
I agree. I agree.
Right
People
on.
rate all weird things, but
Well,
cool.
this has been great. I think it's especially adding the money raising perspective to all of this because I'm obviously a bootstrap background here. Um, I really appreciate it, and thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course.